Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's Daily Global COVID-19 show. I'm honored to convene this daily conversation around all things COVID-19. We discuss three aspects of the crisis: the health, financial, and inequality crises. We are always looking for story ideas, segment ideas, speaker ideas, and theme ideas. Please email me, sree@sree.net, sree@sree.net. Today is our 192nd episode, 192 episodes in a row in 192 days since the pandemic started, since the lockdown started in New York. We have a very important show for you tonight. We are going to be meeting J.W. Walker. He is co-founder and organizer of Reclaim Pride Coalition, a founding member and organizer of Gays Against Guns, and founding member and organizer of Rise and Resist. Please tag your friends. Please share right now, and they can join us and watch us live or later. Hi, everybody. I'm Sree. I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at the Stony Brook School of Journalism and the co-founder of Digimentors, a social, digital, and virtual events consulting business. Our motto: don't cancel your virtual event without talking to us. We've done events for 50 people and 100,000 people. We bet we can help you. Tonight is Friday night, and just about an hour ago, we heard the news that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Ginsburg, RBG, has died. And we know that this is going to mean a chance for us to celebrate the life of a jurist who changed America forever in multiple ways. It also means a chance to prepare for what is going to be a big fight in Washington, in the Senate, looking ahead at what is going to happen. Will President Trump and Senator McConnell and Senator Graham, who is the head of the Judiciary Committee, will they try to push through a nomination at this moment and before the election, or in the period before January and the change of the start of the new term, whether it's President Trump or President Biden? We will find out. And there's going to be lots to talk and debate in the next few weeks. Tonight, we want to celebrate her life and talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So if you have your comments that you write in, we will definitely read them out tonight. And later in the show, towards the end, Mary C. Curtis, political commentator and friend of mine who has covered multiple political campaigns, will join us to talk about the legacy of RBG. So with that, let me just thank you all for being here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting this show for 192 days. In our first 175 plus episodes, we've had 1 million viewers, 129 million social impressions, guests from 316 guests from 63 cities and 17 countries, including the chief scientist of the World Health Organization. We're able to do this because of Scroll.in and Scroll Global. We are so grateful to them. You can find all our archives on youtube.com/Sreenet, and you can also find us on Twitter and on Facebook. Please look for my account and please follow me on those channels. We're also able to do this because of our incredible producers, Rose Horowitz at Rose Horowitz 31 and Vandana Menon, Vandana_Menon. Thank you so much to both of them for making this possible. We are now ready to meet Jay Walker, troublemaker, self-described, and talk to him about various aspects of his life, his work, what he has learned doing everything that he does, and what we can learn from him. We'll also talk about RBG and her legacy and why the Supreme Court is important for so many Americans and for the future of our country, and in fact, for the world. So with that, let me bring on stage J.W. Walker. Hi, Jay.
Hey, Sree, how are you? Whoops, oh, just lost my backdrop.
Well,
Sorry about that. How are you? Thanks very much for having me here today.
well, thank you for coming on. And I know this is a complicated evening for so many of us. We have very strong emotions about RBG and what she has meant to this country. And in many ways, also what her passing means for the next step in the US Constitution, for the US Supreme Court, and therefore various interpretations of the Constitution that we're going to have. As also a friend pointed out online, that a 5-3 Supreme Court now will be responsible for making momentous decisions if anything in the voting process goes to the Supreme Court. And we will see that also in the weeks and months ahead. But with that, first, let me ask you, Jay, to tell us where you are, how you're doing through the pandemic, how's your family through the pandemic, and then we'll get right into talking about your story.
Sure, thank you, Sree. Yes, I live in New York. I live in Manhattan, in Chelsea. My family's stretched out all over the country. I've been pretty fortunate. I have not lost a family member. I have not lost any close friends to the pandemic. I guess I just sort of lucked out in that way. I have, some very good friends and friends that I organize with who have lost very close friends, who have lost family members. One of my good friends, Martin, lost his father just a little over a week ago, or just a few weeks ago, I should say. I've been, quarantining and, trying to do everything that I can to keep myself safe. Seems to be working. But obviously, in the aftermath of Floyd's murder, I have been out in the streets on a regular basis, many times a week, as was my habit before coronavirus. And I think that the fact that the enormous outpouring into the streets here in New York, I think, ended up being rather instructive and really across the country, about how important masks are and how well they work to stop the spread of this virus. New York's had multiple public protest actions every single day since the beginning of June, in every borough practically. But our COVID numbers have continued to go down. We'll see what happens now that some of the schools are back in session. Obviously, there was a big quote unquote COVID spread event that I believe was mostly NYU students at Washington Square Park very recently. We'll have to see what's going to happen with all of our schools in that regard, especially schools that bring in a lot of kids from out of state. But right now we're kind of touching wood that New York seems to be in a good place.
Yeah, we're so lucky in New York. We went, as you know, Jay, from watching in horror what was happening in other countries till we became the epicenter, and now we watch in horror the rest of the country.
The rest of the country.
And they learned nothing from us. It's almost like the sacrifices we made and the 40,000 people plus who died in New York died, and no one learned a thing. It's unbelievable.
Well, the truth is that the entire country should have done in March what New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, what the Northeast did. If the entire country had followed the same, the same rules that we did back in March, or even if we had a decent president even earlier in February or late January, we would be out of this by now. We would have been, probably out of this by May. But because of the fact that folks just never want to see, anything bad in the world as real until it's happening directly to them or someone they love, we constantly end up with these situations like this in America.
It's so pathetic to think about this, and the rest of the world is looking at us, just doesn't understand. And we've seen so much evidence. Thank you for talking about masks, because you heard that the head of the CDC held up a mask and said, it's more likely that this mask is as useful or even more helpful than a vaccine to keep me alive. And Trump said that he didn't understand the question that he was saying. Like, we say in the show, you have to laugh, otherwise you will just cry.
Otherwise you'll cry, But meanwhile, the CDC in early September was sending out, orders to all the different governors, saying that even though their states are the number one, the number two, or the number three in terms of new infections, that they should end their mask mandates. And no one would have known about that until some of those governors sent those documents to Congress, and now Congress is demanding hearings on this kind of advisory that went out to the country.
Yeah, I mean, what can you do? What can we do? We can talk about it, and we can help people understand. Tonight, I know people are thinking a lot about RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the justice who fought for women's rights in this country as a crusading lawyer herself, and then became the second woman nominated and named to the Supreme Court, and had such a big impact on the Supreme Court. And I wanted to ask you your thoughts, and also if you can put in perspective why the Supreme Court and how the Supreme Court is important from your point of view. We know that the Supreme Court matters, and I know that, Jay, you will have some specific ideas and thoughts, so we want to bring you in to think about those and share your ideas here right now about RBG's passing.
It's such an extraordinary loss to this country. Obviously she was of extremely advanced age. I think all of us on the left were just hoping against hope that she would make it to January. She's had so many health problems, but her strength through them has been just astounding. She was like the Energizer Bunny from those old commercials. She would knock her down, she'd get right back up, get back onto the bench, and continue her extraordinary career. I just from my texting and chatting and social media posts of my friends and colleagues and family, the outpouring of grief, but also fear, is just overwhelming across this country. It was like a wave crash across the entirety of this country. She was, she was a bulwark. She was someone that just sort of put herself down in the path or in the path of every attempt that the political right made to constrain our rights, to end women's right to choose, to
we may be having some tech issues. We'll
know what's going to come.
Jay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, we lost you there for just 1 second. We're looking, Jay, at the you top trends on Twitter right now, and everybody, please follow Jay. He's JW Walker1 on Twitter, and here we're looking at all the top items on Twitter right now, and you can see, folks, that how many of them are around RBG. So number one is RIP RBG, Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, SCOTUS. Look at this. This is all about, and there is Merrick Garland. We can talk about that. We have an international audience, so there are definitely people who won't have followed as closely. And look at this horrifying item number 14. It says Ted Cruz on Trump's short list of potential SCOTUS nominees. So that is just like makes zero sense in terms of quality of, we have Thurgood Marshall and folks like that, and then you go and you have Ted Cruz,
Yeah.
who supported Trump after he accused Cruz's father of assassinating JFK
Mhm.
and made fun of his wife in the middle of the campaign on national television. You make someone wife fun of someone's spouse or significant other, and they continue to support you. And then on top of that, he also accuses you of murdering JFK, or your father murdering JFK Jr., and you still support it. Just again, we have to laugh.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that that's a case. That's the case, across the board, except for a very, very tiny, tiny minority of extremely principled Republican elected officials or former elected officials. They've all been that because whatever you want to say about Trump, he's doing what the right wing wants. He's doing what crypto fascists want. He's been packing the courts full of absolute absolute crazy people. And so, I get why, they won't, why they won't say a word against him. It's the combination of that he is actually doing the horrible things that they want him to do. But it's also because they know what a petty, vindictive, spiteful cretin he is. And that if they do say anything against him, he will wage war against them on Twitter.
Yeah, and here you are. You wear your interests on your Twitter page, as you can see right on your design of your page and what you've chosen to highlight. So let's talk a little bit about your work. Lots of people are meeting you tonight for the first time. J.W. Walker1 on Twitter. He's a founding member of Gays Against Guns. He's also the founding member of Rise and Resist and Reclaim Pride NYC. So let's go one by one and talk about each of them, please.
Sure, absolutely. I'd been in the activist space in the '90s. With really a lot of work against hate crimes. Against the issue of hate crimes and for hate crimes legislation. Then I worked for Gay Men's Health Crisis from '97 to 2007, and then I got burnt out. I got burnt out on queer activism. I got burnt out on AIDS activism. I got burnt out on just any of it. And I got a different job in a completely different realm and just kind of left it behind, except for joining social media as time went on. And so I remained fairly political on my Facebook then, which is really the only social media that I had, after Facebook came out. But then on June 12th, 2016, a psychotically disturbed man shot up the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida, and killed 49 mostly LGBTQ people, mostly Latinx people, and injured another 50 plus. And within a couple of days, a meeting had been called at the New York LGBT Center for a group that would go on to become Gays Against Guns. We decided on the name pretty quickly. Within 2 weeks of the Pulse nightclub shooting, exactly 2 weeks after the Pulse nightclub shooting, was our New York City Pride March, Pride Parade. And in that 2 weeks' time, we got over 1,000 people together to march under the banner of Gays Against Guns. And from that, we just focused all of our energy on what we call the chain of death, which is this line between gun manufacturers to gun lobbyists to elected officials and to foreign entities who have been working nonstop to undermine our ability to have safer gun laws. And we've been in coalition with many other organizations, some of which have been founded in recent years, others which have been around for much longer, like Moms Demand Action, the Brady Campaign. And together, we managed to do a lot of good. The one thing that Gays Against Guns did to separate ourselves from the rest of the gun violence prevention GVP organizations is that we committed to be a direct action group. We committed to do on-the-street protests. We committed to name, blame, and shame the various entities and elected officials that were part of what we saw as the chain of death. And we, managed to get a lot done. We have gone after the NRA nonstop through our work and the work of quite a few other organizations. We managed to completely destroy the NRA Business Alliance, which at one point included Wyndham Hotels and Hertz and FedEx. All of these, there were about 20 odd businesses that were part of the alliance, and their whole deal was that they would give discounts to members of the NRA, to dues-paying members of the NRA. We started a campaign that fall of 2016, and it took a couple of years, but we completely dismantled that NRA Business Alliance. The work we've done to focus on the NRA, I believe, has been a really big part of the scrutiny that the NRA has gotten in the media over the last 4 years, as well as its descent into bankruptcy, which is essentially where it is. We partnered with then public advocate Tish James here in New York City on many actions, she's been a long time fighter in the gun violence prevention movement, and I just can't tell you how proud and pleased we were when she announced her legal action against the NRA just about a month ago. She's someone that showed up for us from practically from day one, and so we're thrilled with the work that she's doing now. So that's against guns. There's a lot more to it, but we don't have all day. So that was June of 2012. The Gays Against Guns was formed, and then June of 2016 when Gays Against Guns was formed, and then 5 months later, Donald Trump was declared the winner of the presidential election. And in some ways, I like to think that the sort of public, bold, direct action activism that Gays Against Gun had kind of renewed in New York, along with the Black Lives Matter movement, which had also been very strong in New York for a while. That I think that the space had been created to make the flourishing of all of these resistance groups that formed between November of 2016 and say February of 2017. One of the earliest ones that formed was Rise and Resist, which just started as just people meeting to talk about the issues of Donald Trump, to go over his record or the things that he said during his campaign, to press back against him even being sworn in for a while there. But we, after the inauguration, we just continued the fight. And that was another direct action group, and that group is all about calling out the horror of Donald Trump, paying attention to his every move, paying attention to the people who are in his orbit or in his administration or advising him, and publicly calling them out, publicly, making the case against them. And we've continued to this day. We're doing a lot of work. We're doing a lot of really good messaging. The messaging that Rise and Resist does is very often picked up in the media because we've got a lot of great activists, many of whom are veterans of ACT UP, AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, the fabled HIV/AIDS activist group, which completely changed the face of healthcare in this country for everyone, not just people with HIV and AIDS.
Sorry, I've been following ACT UP for so many years, and I didn't know that was an acronym, that it stood for those words. So tell me,
wow.
Yeah, so that shows you that you could think you're paying attention, but you don't pay enough attention. So tell me again, please.
Yeah, so it's the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power. And there's a very good reason why you may not have realized that it was an acronym. For whatever reason, the New York Times has consistently, since ACT UP was formed, refused to write their name in all caps. They always write it capital A, small c, small t, capital U, small p. It's been a frustration of the members of ACT UP for years and years that the New York Times refuses to do that. And your understanding of ACT UP is probably a result of that, of New York Times and other news organizations not writing the name as an acronym.
I'm really kind of stunned about this because I was, I'm turning 50 this year in a month, and I remember I was here as a kid as a teenager when what we first heard of as the gay cancer was in New York, and you remember that New York being the epicenter of that. And then I left New York when I was 13 in 1983, where just as AIDS was and HIV were getting people's attention, and the fear was just starting, and ACT UP and others were there in 87 and that period. And so I lived overseas and then came back in 92. And by then everyone was just saying ACT UP. So that was also part of it. But it was so interesting. And so words matter and labels matter, and how people choose to, the organizers should have the rights to determine what they should be called. And
absolutely.
I'm really surprised. I don't know the history of this New York Times style business, but that's so fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure, absolutely. Being a part of Gays Against Guns and Rise and Resist, when the next Pride March was scheduled to happen, which June of 2017, a lot of our members of both groups determined that with all of these other resistance groups growing up, I was also growing up in New York, popping up in New York and doing a lot of great work in the streets. We thought that it would be really great for the Pride March to be led by a resistance contingent, and that would be both newer groups like GAG and like Rise and Resist, but also older groups like ACT UP. Other groups that have been, sort of fighting for human rights and civil rights and what have you for many years, to all march as one big resistance contingent. And the organizers of NYC Pride liked that idea. They allowed us to do it. It was very successful. It was a really great day. It was the last Pride March, 2017. It was the last Pride March that did the standard Pride March route, which has been mostly the case for the last 30 or so years, which is marching from somewhere in Midtown down Fifth Avenue and then west along Christopher Street toward the piers. The following year, they reached out to us again, to the folks who had helped organize the resistance contingent, and said, would you like to be in the resistance? Would you like to do another resistance contingent this year? We responded yes, and we started signing up all the groups that had marched the year before. We had radio silence from NYC Pride. And then they finally got back to us and said, oh, no, we don't want you to be a resistance, march all as a contingent. We want you all to march one group and then a float, and then another group and then a flow. Because we think that all of you marching together diffuses your message, which made absolutely no sense. Also that year, they decided also, because in preparation for the following year, which was the Stonewall 50, they decided that they were going to demand that everybody that registered for Pride to wear an armband, and for there to be a limit of X number of people for each group that marched, and all of these other things, theoretically, to make the march, which the prior year had ended after midnight, to make the march shorter, because each year it had been growing for years, and like literally 12 hours from the beginning till the end of it was kind of where it was sitting. And so we pushed back on that, and finally we ended up so frustrated, those of us that were working on this resistance contingent, ended up being so frustrated with working with NYC Pride that we formed the Reclaim Pride Coalition. And it was partially about the issues surrounding that particular march, but more broadly, it was really about the over-commercialization of Pride, the kinds of corporations that they allowed to sponsor, corporations that are really, really bad actors on the global stage, on the national stage. Corporations like Wells Fargo, which has, been like the lead banker of the NRA for years. Corporations, banks that supported the DAPL pipeline, things like that. And then also because of the over-policing of Pride, and the over-policing of the West Village, and the over-barricading of the Pride March itself and of the neighborhood at the end of it. Looking back to the origins of Pride, the motto or the chant was off the sidewalks into the streets, encouraging anybody who was standing there watching the march go by to jump in and join them. And that's something that I did as a young man when I was first coming out in the late 80s, early 90s. And by the year 2000, the march route was so completely barricaded off that it was literally impossible for anyone to join from the streets. You had to be in a contingent. So that was part of the formation of the Reclaim Pride Coalition, and we went on to hosting our own march in 2019 for the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, which ended up having about 45,000 people marching with us. And then in 2020, we had over 50,000 people marching in our march when there was no New York City Heritage or Pride March because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And with those 50,000 people marching, all of them in masks, handing out hand sanitizer, gloves to everyone, still no outbreak because we knew how to handle our business.
Wow. Thank you for this amazing history that you're teaching us. You've lived through it. You've impacted it. You've made it happen, that change can happen, and why we should pay attention. And look at this. It didn't take Mitch McConnell even 2 hours. He did not wait. He said he will move forward quickly with President Trump's nominee to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I am so angry to read that right now. The man who wouldn't even move forward with Merrick Garland back in 2016, saying it's unseemly, saying it is wrong to do that in an election year. There are less than 50 days, and he will move forward. What do you say, Jay?
I mean, it just puts the lie to everything that Mitch McConnell has ever said. It's everyone knows that Mitch McConnell is an operator. That's, he's going to do what he thinks is right to get the Republicans to win in every situation. Nobody actually believed in 2016 that because it was early 2016 when Scalia died and Garland was proffered as the nominee. Nobody believed at that time that was any kind of principled stand. Nobody on the left or the right. They knew what it was, is he was stopping Obama from putting another person on the Supreme Court. That's all that was about. Hoping that the Republicans would win in the fall and blocking Obama from putting someone on the Supreme Court just in case the Republican won the presidency. So the moment that we heard that that Justice Ginsburg had died, I think that everybody pretty much knew that's exactly the way that this was going to roll out. I think that what we've merely got to hope right now is that, given Donald Trump's atrocious judgment about all things, that he hopefully will have chosen as his first nominee someone who has a lot of ugly stuff in their record that can tie the process up in investigating that person or what have you. That's probably our only hope.
And we know that he had somebody accused credibly of sexual assault
Hmm.
and he still went forward, and that man still won and is on our Supreme Court now in Kavanaugh, and wasn't qualified, wasn't an eminent jurist in any sense of the term. He was an activist, an angry, hatchet man, and he got to become the Supreme Court nominee and then Supreme Court justice. I want to bring onto the stage now our friend Jonathan Borstein, who was the reason that we got to meet. He wants to talk to you for a while about your work and what you've been doing. And then we're going to transition into talking more directly about RBG with Mary Curtis, who's going to join us. So now I'm going to bring on Jonathan. And hi, Jonathan.
Hello.
Hi, Jonathan.
Thank you for being here, Jonathan. We should tell everybody that Jonathan's watched 192 days in a row, and he is here because he's an amazing friend of the show, but also has such great judgment on who to bring. And so when he told me about Jay and his work, I said, of course. So go ahead, Jonathan. I'll leave the two of you on stage for a little bit, and I'm going to go fume about Mary C. Curtis and with Mary C. Curtis when she comes and talk some more about RBG. So go ahead, and Jonathan, the floor is yours with Jay Walker. And everybody watching, please share this right now with your friends and family. They need to listen and watch and participate.
I guess my first question is kind of mutated because of the news, but Gays Against Guns has planned a huge rally tomorrow. And how do you think the death of Ginsburg is going to affect that?
The rally is absolutely going to go on. The rally is about the iron pipeline that brings guns from states with weak and lax.
We seem to have lost Jay for a moment.
Yeah, he's been having some. Yep, there he is. He comes right back. He bounces right back. There.
That's what I like to say. No matter what happens to him, he bounces back.
Yeah. And we're showing the Facebook link, so go ahead and talk that through, please. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So yeah, so the iron pipeline is it's essentially a black market for guns. People go to gun shows or even gun stores in states like North Carolina or South Carolina or West Virginia or Indiana that have had long-term Republican leadership at the state level, have very, very lax laws about acquiring weaponry. And so they buy guns fairly inexpensively, at either gun shows or gun stores or through private sales. Then they truck them up into major urban areas like New York City, like Chicago, in states that have much stronger gun laws, and they sell them at a profit. So they make a profit on these because of the scarcity of guns in the New York City market. The prices are therefore higher. Mm-hmm. And they literally flood guns into our communities, and mostly into communities of color. And so there's several pieces of legislation that at the state level and federal level that we're trying to push on that subject. We're just trying to educate people. 70% of guns that are recovered at crime scenes in New York originated in another state. That's when people talk about these democratic cities like Chicago or New York, and they're having all the gun violence and they're blaming the Democrats. It's like, no, it has nothing to do with the leadership within the city. It has to do with really bad leadership in states that allow people to buy 500 guns during the course of a year illegally, so that they can then resell them in major urban areas. So we're having this action tomorrow at 12 in Union Square. We're going to stick with it. I think essentially that every action that is going to happen over the course of the next week is going to take some space to honor Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think that's the way that she would want it. I know that she definitely would not want those of us who are out here.
Um, very briefly, oh, here he is.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think that the internet is just driving me crazy today. Yeah, I think that she would want those of us who are fighting for the rights of all Americans and for the rights of immigrants and for the rights of, for global human rights. She would want us to continue our fight. She would want us to take a day off. But I think in honor of her, we'll definitely be remembering her and her work.
In terms of Rise and Resist, what is planned?
Well, Rise and Resist is doing actions, every other day. Rise and Resist is a co-sponsor of the March for the Dead, which is a movement that some members of Rise and Resist and Gays Against Guns and several other activist groups have been pursuing since August. It's a march just in honor of all the people that we've lost. We've just passed the 200,000 mark of deaths from COVID. And to speak truth to power and all of the lies that have been coming out of the Trump administration since day one of this pandemic. So the latest March for the Dead action is going to be the little pond on the southeast corner of Central Park at 5th Avenue and 59th Street. It's called Trump Lied, 200,000 people died. And we are going to probably do a little march to a Trump property. It's going to be a really beautiful action. We have a wonderful opera singer that's going to be performing, Adrienne. We're the Resistance Revival Chorus, who participated in our first March for the Dead in August, is also going to be there to perform. And we're going to have some beautiful stagecraft in this action. That's one thing that you can get with when you get a lot of queer activists together. A lot of good stagecraft at actions.
On a sort of stagecraft, when we were doing the preliminary discussion of this, you told me about a great group called Sing Out Louise, which, because of our audience being international, you're going to have to explain what that means, as well as how it came about, and what Sing Out Louise has been doing.
Absolutely. So Sing Out Louise began as an offshoot of Gays Against Guns. That first Christmas season of 2016, one of our Gays Against Guns members, Mark Ladorf, who is an off-Broadway lyricist. He's had, he's performed in shows. He's had several of his shows produced off-Broadway. He thought it would be a great idea to rewrite some Christmas carols into anti-gun lyrics. This would have been in October or so that he came up with this idea. Well, we were moving forward on that idea of doing these Christmas carols, and then then Donald Trump won the election in November, and so we turned them from just anti-gun Christmas carols into anti-Trump and anti-gun Christmas carols. So we were called Gagnog. We did a lot of singing all through that Christmas season. Then we traveled to the Women's March in January, but we couldn't be called Gagnog anymore because it wasn't Christmas time anymore. So we changed the name to Gag Reflex. And we're a big hit at the Women's March just out of a weird circumstance that the crowd marching ended up getting stuck in one place at a particular time. And our members happened to have access to a raised platform, like a step or a porch or something like that on the outside of the building that wasn't in use. And so they basically entertained all of these women's marchers who were just kind of stuck in place because it was such a crowded march. So the following summer, it spun off into its own entity separate from Gays Against Guns. And it became Sing Out Louise. For those who don't recognize Sing Out Louise, the term Sing Out Louise, it's a line from Gypsy. Ethel Merman very famously says to Gypsy Rose Lee, "Sing out, Louise," to get her out of her shyness. And so it's a great line. A lot of people know it. It's very gay. And so we used it. So Mark, when he spun the group off, he used that for the name. And so we do, during the holidays, we still do the Christmas carols, and we write new ones every year. The rest of the time, we're doing Americana. We've written Americana songs. We've written show tunes. We've written songs. We've written disco songs. We have a catalog of literally hundreds of parody songs now. And we produced a really great video called Vote before the 2018 election to the tune of Madonna's Vogue. And we basically tried to do, as close as we could, being amateurs, a shot-by-shot recreation of that famous Madonna Vogue video.
That was a really spot-on parody.
Right? It was pretty good, right?
I wish we could show it, but Facebook has its own strange rules.
Oh, right. Oh, well, yeah, I think it's on our YouTube page as well, but who knows? It's so difficult these days. If you don't have that like original video file, it becomes really difficult to show things on platforms like this. I get that. But yeah, we're on it's Sing Out Louise NYC. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And singoutlouisenyc.net is our website. You can download all of our old hymnals, which is what we call them, our hymnals. So you can literally see, you can kind of see the history of the Trump administration through the songs, because our songs are written, they're kind of like Law and Order, kind of torn from the headlines. So some particularly horrible thing happens, in the news. Mark, who's a brilliant lyricist, and a few of our other members have written a number of songs. I've written a few. We sort of are very reactive to what's going on in the news of the day. And so, the songs were very current for the time. But if you go back and look through the old hymnals, you'll kind of see this interesting flow of the Trump administration going through our songs.
Where do you think all these organizations are going to go in the next, I guess, countdown to the election? What is planned?
I think everyone is focused on, well, there's kind of 3, 4, 5 things. You've got COVID. You've got calling out the administration on COVID. You've got people doing mutual aid to folks who need help getting PPE, or even just feeding their families. So a lot of the queer groups that help form the Reclaim Pride Coalition, for instance, a lot of them are doing that sort of mutual aid work. Obviously, the reckoning is happening. The reckoning is real. The reckoning is not going anywhere. So all of the broad number of entities that are participating in activism are all a part of the reckoning and the Black Lives Matter movement, regardless of what the organization's name is or what their main original focus was. We're all in it together, and obviously the election. People are working on getting out the vote. People are working on the big focus, I think, right now, that I think a lot of people are shifting into, is working on informing people about the various rights and processes around early voting, finding out the right, and sort of trying. I think one thing that a lot of groups are trying to move into now is the whole sort of managing expectations around election night. Because we have this completely unprecedented situation now, right, where we're going to have all this early voting. Some states begin counting the early ballots before election day. Some don't really have an early voting system. Some are, some don't start counting the ballots, the early votes, the absentee votes until election day. And so, we're going to have a situation unlike any prior election when it comes to turning on your local channel or turning on your cable news channel to find out how the election's going, who's ahead. We're not going to know anything really. Like whatever, the exit polls that are used to be predictive of who wins what state, they're not going to mean anything anymore this year. And so people, so there's a lot of concern about what will happen if not enough Americans are informed about this very, very serious change to how election night is going to go. We're especially concerned about Donald Trump's white supremacist fans, his little maggot minions. We're really concerned that they're going to go out and commit acts of violence if they don't hear, Donald Trump cleared the winner right away. And so, I think that there's a lot of thought going into that right now about what's going to be the best way, to pressure media entities to properly inform voters beforehand and on election night, but also just from a public information perspective, just to get the word out that way.
All right. Thank you for this great conversation. I want to, before we let you go, Jay, just to hear a little bit about where people can find you, follow you. You can tell us all of that. And then we're going to bring in Mary Curtis. Oops, he's been having tech troubles, as you know, Jonathan. So thank you, Jonathan. Anything that you want us to know about Jay and where we can, there he is, he's just joining us. And Mary Curtis is in backstage, ready to join us in just a minute. Jay is still having tech trouble. There he is, he's joined us.
Yes.
So one of the things that Jonathan made sure I know is that your work matters every day that you're doing, Jay, and you're out there working so hard on behalf of people who aren't always getting their issues covered properly. So thank you for that, Jay. Really, really appreciate it. Anything else you want to give us a final thought?
Yeah, no, thank you for all the work that you're doing. Creating spaces where folks can talk about these kinds of issues is so crucially important. The mainstream media largely ignored the resistance in a lot of ways, and so it's always great when folks are paying this kind of.
And Jonathan, anything you'd like to add?
Two things. First of all, follow the advice of seeing Out Louise's video, vote. The other is really picking up on your comment about ACT UP. I think I'm probably, because I'm almost a generation older than both of you. Initially, ACT UP's acronym was well known, not in the Times, but you would pick it up in places like The Voice, or I don't remember if the Soho Weekly News was still around then. It was in the very early days explained. Somehow the acronym just became the name. When I speak to Sean Strube next, I'll ask him if he remembers when the segue happened, because he was an early ACT UP member and activist.
Sean was a guest, thanks to Jonathan. He is a mayor in a town in Pennsylvania, and was and one of the first openly HIV positive people to run for Congress. And it was just a fascinating conversation. Jonathan, thank you always for bringing us great guests. Everyone, please follow Jonathan on Instagram. He's Jonathan Borstein, and on Twitter is Jonathan 1003. He is his zip code, and he is fantastic. Thank you so much, Jonathan. And we just want to give Jay a chance to say goodbye properly. I do want to show you, Jay, that this past week you're wearing the Good Trouble t-shirt, and you called yourself a troublemaker when we gave you your chance to choose. And here we had Don Porter on Tuesday. So if you go into my archives, Don Porter, director of John Lewis Good Trouble, was here, and we had such a great conversation. So I feel it's awesome that we get to talk to you, and you're wearing your Good Trouble t-shirt right now. And thank you for all you do. Remind us of the two protests for two different topics, but it's all related, all intersectional.
On this weekend.
Yeah, on this weekend. Saturday, Gays Against Guns, and Sunday, the resistance.
Gays Against Guns is down in Union Square, 10003. Rise and Resistance up towards Central Park.
All right. Well, thank you very much, both of you, and we'll let you go. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. And thank you, Jonathan. Thank you all for watching. We are now going to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Ginsburg, rest in peace. Well, she couldn't even rest for 2 hours because of what Mitch McConnell has already announced, that he will immediately push for whoever Donald Trump nominates. To help us understand this story and what it means and why we have to pay attention and why we couldn't even mourn her for 2 hours before this became completely political, we have a fabulous political commentator who's been covering political campaigns for years, who has helped us and helped me understand multiple important stories, including on my New York Times read along and as a guest on my WBI show within 12 hours of the passing of the great John Lewis. We just talked about him and the Good Trouble shirt that that Jay Walker was wearing. Please welcome onto our stage Mary Curtis. Hi, Mary.
Hi. Good evening. Good to see you. And what you said, you relate to so much. Here we have this history-making legal giant who, you know, has her whole arc of her career from when women couldn't even get jobs at law firms or become law clerks. And she's made history and written amazing decisions and dissents. And we can't even sit in that for a moment before it turns political, as we knew it would.
And it really has. When I tweeted what I said exactly 2 hours ago, I said, you know, rest in peace, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Hope Trump and McConnell don't push it through. A couple of people wrote back to me saying, you know, why are you being political? And it didn't even take 2 hours. They didn't even wait 2 hours, not 2 days, not 2 weeks, not even 2 hours. And that is so sad. First, let me introduce you properly. Mary is so kind to have joined just at zero notice here. If you were kind enough to join again at a time of, you know, I do want to talk to you when there aren't giants of the American state passing.
I know.
But you were awesome when you came and explained to me and to my audience the meaning of John Lewis's life and everything we need to understand. So thank you for being here. Just a quick catch up on you. How are you doing through this pandemic and through these last few weeks since we saw each other? It's been a couple of months.
Well, thank you. Actually, this is my second television hit tonight. I was on China Global Television Network because talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I was a little down for a while because I had a birthday not too long ago, and my son drove down from New York, where he's a history professor, and I hadn't seen him since January. And when he left, I just realized, usually I see him quite often. I'm up in New York doing speaking for the Op-Ed Project or reporting for Roll Call. I'm a columnist there out of Washington and working. And I had planned a trip in April to do work, but of course with COVID. So I hadn't seen him. And then he left, and I realized how off our rituals and routines are. And I just hope we get to some semblance of normalcy. But because people are still arguing over even wearing masks, I'm not too positive about that development and all the news coming out of the CDC and the messaging and the politicization of it. And then to hear that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was deceased was quite a tough thing. You know, she had been such a fighter, and she had that energy. And I know that up until a couple of years ago, when she first had illnesses, she went to every argument of the court. And I particularly recall her dissent in the Shelby decision in 2013, when the Supreme Court, the Roberts Court, invalidated provisions of the Voting Rights Act to take away pre-clearance and cleared the way for so many states to put on these onerous voting ID bills, which is another in connection with John Lewis. And she wrote a blistering, incredibly amazing dissent. And she was incredible at that. What a legal mind. And now she's the political fight is just beginning. And Mitch McConnell, of course, who would not let Merrick Garland even get a hearing when he died much earlier. Scalia died much earlier in an election year. and Barack Obama named him and he was the president, he wouldn't even let him get a hearing, is now using some tortured logic to say he's going to push through a judge so he can cement that conservative majority for Trump. Although I have seen there are going to be some complications. People like Susan Collins in Maine and Lisa Murkowski in Alaska and others are saying that perhaps we should wait. And he will need that Senate majority, but it's going to be ugly. And it's going to be tough.
One of the things Jay Walker, our guest in the previous segment, said to me was that, one of the things we can hope is that he's so inept that he'll, fumble the nomination process as could happen, and nominate someone terrible. But I said he did nominate someone terrible in Kavanaugh, and still got that through. And that tells you that all of these things, you cannot predict what's going to happen. And I feel no vindication in saying that McConnell didn't even wait that much time. And that's how political you have to be, because the Trump administration and his enablers are that political. And
definitely. They play to win, and they already have a whole list up. Last time, Amy Coney Barrett was a finalist. She's a very conservative appeals court judge. Her name is up there, and many others. And McConnell, he's undergoing his own reelection campaign. Amy McGrath isn't, according to the polls, he doesn't have much to worry about. There are other senators like Cory Gardner in Colorado and Susan Collins who might, have some problems if they are looking to push this through and play this politically, because they're in kind of purple states. And so you're going to see Mitch McConnell doing what he does best and playing this political game. And of course, Trump's folks, I do feel that Republicans are much better than Democrats at running on the courts, which they did in 2016. And Trump filled all these court vacancies and affected politics in our courts for decades to come. I don't think Democrats really hit that as hard. You do see, though, the Affordable Care Act, the legality of it, Roe v. Wade. There's some really very monumental decisions coming up before this court. And I do wonder, Roberts he is a conservative. He's tried occasionally to be the institutionalist because he knows that people are seeing the Supreme Court as more and more partisan. You wonder what he is going to do in some ways, but I really think at heart he is a conservative. So, it's really tough. Also, Ginsburg herself wrote a note pretty much when she knew she was dying and said, it is my hope that you would wait for the next president to name the next Supreme Court justice. And we're political when people are ignoring the wishes of this woman, of this justice, of this icon. But yeah.
It doesn't matter, right, what she thinks, because no one has to listen to her and the other side. The old, like, decorum and things that used to be in Washington, that people used to make fun of Washington, all of that is gone now, and it's been coarsened in so many ways. The House first, and then the Senate. And there's just, the way in which this country, people used to disagree on some things, but there was a core that we understood and we agreed on, and everything else was at the margins. The margins have now come to the center, and that is the pain we're going through now.
Yeah, I think people realize that so many of these traditions weren't really written down, but it's just what people did. And now it's anything goes. It's up for grabs, and none of these traditions are respected. The insult, it's really, I have seen it ramped up even in the responses I get to my work. The tone of it. As I said, I've been on TV on different programs and things. And when you get on these roundtables, people start interrupting and calling people liars. And it's like a blood sport. And it's really wrapped up in people's very identities. And it's really hard to have reasoned discussions often. And this, I do think in this, you saw the crowds outside of the Supreme Court who are mourning RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I do think, though, with you've seen people in the streets about the issue of racial justice, which that has been politicized. We've seen the president try to conflate peaceful demonstrators with fascism, with violence and so many other things, and not really admit that there is a reason why people are marching for justice. And so I think now people will take to the streets if indeed they do try to push through. I think people will act because I think people realize that so much is at stake, so very much is at stake. And it's interesting. You know, I take walks in my little suburban neighborhood and you see the signs. I was at the gym and this young woman named Amber, a young white woman, had Black Lives Matter all around. It's, you know, people are really planting their flag. Also, I've seen caravans of people with Trump flags and Don't Tread on Me and all of that. They were staging a staging area in a library near me. It was like a scene from The Birds. I turned around and there were two, and then there were like 50, and they said, we're going to march and we're going to drive downtown.
Did they have masks? Probably not.
No, they did not have masks, and not many of them were from the neighborhood, but they were meeting at a local library parking lot to march, to drive down in a caravan. So we see that this battle, particularly when you have things like Roe v. Wade, the Affordable Care Act, you know, and many things up in the courts, and it's going to be a pitched battle, very political. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she did leave such a mark, and the arc of her life is so. I was just reading about. She was a top student, but couldn't get a clerkship, and she couldn't get a job in a law firm. So she taught, then she worked at the ACLU, kind of following like Thurgood Marshall, someone who before they were on the court had argued arguments before the court and had been an activist in many ways for justice, which now I think that might hurt you to get on the court in many ways. But she and someone like Marshall blazed this path before they became justices.
And you know, in journalism, they always say how this is they're like Fridays are slow news nights, right? Fridays are slow. This just on the death that we've had on 3 Fridays, one in July with John Lewis, and then Chadwick Boseman dying on a Friday night, who played Thurgood Marshall. You couldn't make this up. The connections here are amazing. And then now on a Friday night in September, we lose RBG. And what you said about things going back to normal, this is not going to be normal in any way until a president takes the inauguration, you know, is inaugurated, because there's going to be resistance and fighting and disagreements and all of that. Even in an election year that's generally normal, things can go wrong, as we saw in how many days the Supreme Court got involved in 2000. And
yes, you may have this court weighing in.
Yeah, and that was then. Now we'll have a 5-3 court weighing in instead of 5-4. If this doesn't say, you know, it could even be a 6-3. Who knows? So this is just, you know, we use the word unprecedented a lot, but this is unprecedented in every single way.
Oh, it really is. And remember, she wrote the dissent, I believe, in Bush v. Gore, another brilliant dissent, I believe. And people are saying she should have retired earlier, so Barack Obama would have had a chance to nominate a judge. But who's to say that if Mitch McConnell were the Senate Majority Leader, that he would have let any of Obama's nominees come before them? There's no guarantee of that. So you really don't know that would have happened, because it's so partisan. And Mitch McConnell, look at all he has spent so much time confirming judges, but on his desk is a voting rights bill and the COVID relief bill and so many other things that are just sitting there because all they're doing is confirming conservative judges. And, you know, that it's just amazing.
And just, you know, really incredible that this is the situation we're in. Before we wrap up, could you just explain, because we have an international audience, a little bit about the process? Who are the characters here, including a character named Lindsey Graham, who you know him and his work very well in the Carolinas. Talk a little bit about all these different people who have a role, Mitch McConnell, the Senate Judiciary Chairman, all of that, and how this all comes together, please.
Yeah, I was just on a call, actually, a little round table with Lindsey Graham's opponent, he's tied with now in the polls, Jamie Harrison, a young African-American man. Who would have thought? Who knows what's going to happen? But yes, they're going to have to, Trump is going to, it looks like pretty quickly, name somebody, and they will get a hearing in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. You'll have Lindsey Graham. And it's so interesting because isn't Kamala Harris on that committee? Who's
yes,
the senator from California who, and also you have Amy Klobuchar, who did run, also the Democratic senator, and they will question this person. And the way the rules used to be, you needed not just a simple majority when it comes to confirming a Supreme Court justice, but now the rules have been changed by Mitch McConnell, who's the Senate Majority Leader, who's a senator from Kentucky, who is also up for re-election, but he seems to be doing pretty well. And they just need a simple majority. And so right now, if all the Republicans vote in favor, they can push through a Supreme Court judge. But some Republicans are saying that, I've heard Chuck Grassley of Iowa, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. You never know. Mitt Romney's a bit of a wild card, and he was the one Republican senator that voted for impeachment on one count. So you don't know what's going to happen. So either way, and then part of it is, even after the election, say if Joe Biden wins, there is that lame duck session. Even if Joe Biden wins and the Democrats retake the Senate and Mitch McConnell is no longer the majority leader, none of that will take effect until the inauguration next year in January. So there'll be a whole long time where, if he wants to, no matter what happens, Mitch McConnell can try to push through someone Trump names. That would be a pretty gutsy move if the Democrats have retaken the majority and that Joe Biden wins. But that still doesn't mean that they would not attempt to do it.
In fact, I'll be more desperate to do it in that period. Does it change, on January 7th or on the 20th, whatever the inauguration day is? Because Congress comes in a little early, right?
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure of that. I'm not sure.
These are things we didn't really have to know, and now we have.
January 20th. January 20th is the
inauguration.
Yeah, the inauguration. But you could just see Trump giving, if he doesn't win, a goodbye present of, this is my new Supreme Court justice. I see the list is going up. He named a big list, including Ted Cruz and Josh.
And Tom Cotton. I mean, these are.
And a bunch of other justices. But I do think that Amy Coney Barrett, who many people liked, she's conservative. She brought up her Catholic faith. And there were many people pushing for her the last time instead of Kavanaugh. And she was a finalist. That definitely would be it. So, yeah, you'll see religious groups get involved, faith groups. I'll be getting some emails from values coalitions. For many people, abortion is the issue, but for many religious groups. But I have also been involved in phone calls with groups like Catholics for Biden, who feel that when you talk about life issues, you have to also think about health care for the poor and child care and things like that, that those are also life issues. So even religious groups are kind of split on what they want. But yeah, so I do think the next thing you'll see, I wonder how long they'll wait, though. Will they wait a day, or will
No, they should be doing it now. If they're smart, whoever's on which side will be activated right now, because there is no doubt in the next few weeks, in the middle of a pandemic, this
Yeah.
is going to be a priority. And if Trump nominates someone, which I don't see why he won't,
He will.
and then Mitch McConnell will push that through. And in that speed, that's where errors can happen. But
Yes.
you never know, and we will find out. And we'll have to stay tuned.
Yeah, we also have a debate coming up. We have the pandemic. We have this mess with the Postal Service and mail-in votes and all these lawsuits in all of these states to try to manipulate that. And now we have, right in the middle of it, a very political fight over control of the Supreme Court. I don't see how it could get crazy.
I'm so tired. Mary, help me. I'm so exhausted already. What do we do? How are you going to keep your spirits up? How are you going to keep your energy for these next 50 days?
It's going to be hard. And I have an announcement that I'm going to come in here and do an important announcement that is going to make it even more complicated. I'll leave you with a little tantalizing note there, but you'll have to have me back on in a couple of weeks and I'll have something even. But no, I'm not sleeping pretty much. As I said, at 9 o'clock, I was on.
You're teasing us here, Mary. I just want you to know that, but I will have you back if you'll come with the announcement.
But you'll have me back. But no, it is difficult. I mean, like I said, I'm really busy, but I'm home and you're not seeing family members that you're used to. It is very unsettling. And when I had the birthday, I thought about it. I said, I wonder if by my next birthday, things will have a semblance of normalcy. And then I realized not really, because we have the pandemic, and I don't think the election is going to be decided on election day. There'll be court cases. There'll be people trying to stop the vote, count the vote. And now you also have the president talking about vigilantes and defending the young guy who shot people and condemning marchers for social justice. It is I really tell people, I maybe it's because I'm right in the middle of it, but I think
because you're in North Carolina, that's why.
Well, but also in the middle of covering it all over.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And, this is something that we think about things and we always say, this isn't us, or it couldn't happen here, or all of those things. And I think I hear a story like this one reported out of the immigration center that they're looking into about immigration women having procedures on them and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think, well, maybe this is us, and maybe we really have to take a good look at what our fellow Americans are capable of. And I think we're at a very serious crossroads, a very serious time, Sree. And when I think of someone like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who devoted her life to these causes of justice, and a John Lewis, that makes me sad too, because we're losing them at a time where we really need them more than ever.
No, so beautifully put, and thank you for that, and thank you for sharing this comment from LA. This has been such a blow, a punch in the gut. It's just so many comments coming in here, and so sad to see this. I do want people to understand that this matters because a 6-3 Supreme Court.
Oh yes.
And especially the younger justices that Trump has named and Republicans have named, compared to the older ones that are there, means this is generational. This is almost forever. Of course, it's not forever. America will be around for a long time, but decisions about the environment, the decisions about human rights, the decisions about things that will have permanent long-term impacts are going to come in front of the Supreme Court in the next year. It may come in the next few weeks even, and they will decide that 5-3 and then 6-3. There's nothing that the three liberal justices will be able to do. We're in a moment where John Roberts seems like a swing vote as he has been, and he's put us in the awkward position of cheering for him
Yes.
on cases. It's like
when John Roberts is your only hope,
Yeah.
you know, that's kind of a, and you're thinking of everything from, you know, campaign finance to union rights to, as you say, to housing, to the environment. Look at all of these environmental rules that have just, and then we have the fires out in the West Coast, which is all of a piece. Environmental racism, all of these things. And like I said, coming up in this session was, I think, the Affordable Care Act. And we see now after COVID, so many people who need this health care and they've lost their jobs, so they don't have it connected to that. What is going to happen? We see people being evicted. This is really tough. You know, this is, like I say, it is a very unsettling time for many reasons. And people really, when people say to me, I get so upset, I just turn off the news. And I said, well, first of all, I can't turn off the news since that's my business, but you need to look at it, because when you say you're exhausted by watching it, imagine the people who are living it. You know, imagine the, you know, George Floyd's family, or imagine these things. The people are living it. You can't just turn it off. You have to get involved. But if it doesn't affect your life, sometimes it's really difficult for people to engage. But you know, you do have to think of people like RBG, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who really, as I said, she was going to the court. She was fighting this cancer. You know, she lost her husband a few years ago, of 56 years. I did not know them, but you know, I know people who said that they were just lovely, committed people, and very just good people who really supported one another in their goals. And there are people like that in the world, and that's why people are out in front of the courts who didn't know her. They feel lost. They feel hurt. Not in the world is not a world they want to be in. And I just wish we could have spent a day mourning her before she became some kind of political pawn, her death. But that is the world we're in, Sree. And it'll take a lot of good people to turn it around and make a difference.
I love this picture, by the way, of you and Michelle Obama. I've seen it multiple times. It's
my sister. No. Not really. That was a joke. If anyone.
And you've talked to so many interesting people. You also have a fabulous picture with John Lewis somewhere in here.
Yes, and I think I have one with Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I just saw this. We just
not recently.
Yeah,
that was one with Patricia McBride, the famous ballerina who got a Kennedy Center honor and who I had the pleasure to interview on stage. And you know, you talk about the COVID. I do love my theater and my ballet and things, and I do programs like interview playwrights and choreographers on stage, and that's gone too with COVID. You don't, the things that used to take me away from all this political stuff are no more. I can't, the travel, the arts, all of those things have changed fundamentally, and that's been, I know that sounds frivolous when people are being evicted, the fact that I can't go to a show, but it doesn't, your life is different.
And you need that in our lives. And we were even saying we need humor because others will just cry all day because things are so bad that we need to laugh. Before I let you go, I heard this phrase that I'm obsessed with now, that when it comes to elections and candidates, Republicans, once they have their candidate, they're all in. They don't talk badly about them. They don't do it. They just, you know, as long as they're about guns and God and gays and, you know, anti-gay, being anti-gay and things like that, and abortion, they're ready to support them. So the term I heard, and whereas Democrats, as you know, are always poking at their own candidates, and there was this comment.
Democrats fall in love and Republicans fall in line.
That's a great line. The one that I'm thinking about also is that Republicans are unapologetic, whereas Democrats are unforgiving for any position you ever held will be held against you.
Yes.
It's and that's why Republicans are now in this situation. The Democrats showed in 2018 that in a fair fight, they can take back the House. Whether they can take back the Senate is unclear, and it may not even matter when it comes to Supreme Court because of this current structure today. To be continued, and Mary's promised to come back because she's got something up her sleeve that she's not revealing right now.
I have my sleeves, and there's something up my sleeves.
Thank you so much.
I always leave you with a little something coming attraction, Sree. You know that. You know me well enough by now, don't you?
You do. You know your theater, so you know how to be theatrical in this.
I know, Act Two. But I do want to just leave us just saying, remember what a life from the girl from Brooklyn to the Supreme Court judge, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That is, and it's so tiny but so fierce. So tiny but so fierce.
Yeah,
so.
Beautiful. And Kate says we need to dig deep and carry on for her. And Fernando says this is a dark night, and it truly is. Thank you so much, Mary. Everyone, please follow her. She's M Curtis NC3.
Yes, on Twitter.
On Twitter, and she's easier to find her at Mary C. Curtis on.
And my Instagram is maryc.curtis.
Mary C. Curtis. We love that C in there. What does the C stand for?
I was named after my grandmother, Mary Cecilia.
Awesome.
I'm so Catholic.
Well, that means you have that kind of, you grew up in that culture, right? So that, and so that means you have credibility when you report on it, when you talk about it, and how much the country has changed. You remember the stories that I have studied as you have, that back in 1960, when candidate Kennedy was running, the fear was that, if a Catholic became president, he would have a direct line to the Pope. And
it's interesting. If Joe Biden is elected, he would only be the second Catholic president.
So after all of these years, but
yes.
Yeah, that is really, I didn't even think about that.
Yes, Kerry was Catholic, but he didn't win. So if Joe Biden is elected, he would only be the second Catholic president. There's something for you.
Thank you. And also that you remember until candidate Senator Obama became president, there hadn't been a senator between Jack Kennedy and Barack Obama who had been president. I think I have to think about it. Mostly governors were being elected. Right? There was a run of governors becoming.
And then we have someone like Donald Trump who has never been elected to anything. And what could go wrong?
Everything could go wrong, and that's what we're learning now. Thank you very much, Mary. On a dark night, you have given us some insight, some light, and you're telling us what to look for in these next 50 days, and I'm greatly appreciative. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, thank you, Sree, and I'll see you very soon.
Okay, thank you. And that was Mary Curtis. Wasn't she awesome? She's Mary Curtis, maryccurtis.com, her website. Please check her out. And also, please follow her on Twitter, mcurtisnc3 on Twitter. Please follow her. You will get a lot of insight. She's a terrific political columnist and commentator. Thank you all for being here. One of the things we do on the show, we ask Kimberly Crenshaw, the great Columbia Law School professor, what should we do to be allies of Black people? And she said very simply, say their names. And so now we're going to say their names. You have seen me do this before, perhaps. We use this Time magazine cover. There are tiny names written around the border, and I'm going to read them. You will see this stunning painting by Titus Kaffer of a mother with a child taken away. You see the blue glove of the pandemic. You see on the right young Larcinia Floyd with her son, George Floyd. She would die 2 years almost to the day that he was murdered. And now they are buried next to each other in Houston. He was, of course, killed on camera in Minneapolis. And now we will say the names that were on the margins there. Trayvon Martin, Yvette Smith, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald, Tanisha Anderson, Akai Gurley, Tamir Rice, Jerame Reed, Natasha McKenna, Eric Harris, Walter Scott, Freddie Gray, William Chapman, Sandra Bland, Darius Stewart, Samuel Dubose, Janet Wilson, Kaylin Rockmore, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Joseph Mann, Terrence Crutcher, Chad Robertson, Jordan Edwards, Aaron Bailey, Stefan Clark, Danny Ray Thomas, Antoine Rose, Botham Jean, Tatiana Jefferson, Michael Dean, Ahmad Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. And that is, of course, not a complete list. That was just the names on the Time Magazine list. One of our wonderful viewers, Rahajan, has put together a much longer list, and a list that also includes people who had been killed by white supremacy. Tomorrow, we have a fantastic guest joining us. We're going to continue the political discussion. It's about race and religion in America. Kathy Joshi, Professor Kathy Joshi, has written White Christian Privilege, The Illusion of Religious Equality in America. And we're going to learn a lot more about that in the next 50 days. This couldn't be a more timely topic. Episode 193, 9 a.m. tomorrow, not 9 p.m., 9 a.m. on Saturdays, so that we can try to have our evenings free on Saturday nights, Vandana and Rose and I. So please join us tomorrow. Spread the word. We're going to talk about everything that's coming up politically tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern. You won't want to miss this. It's going to be an epic conversation. Thank you all for being here. I want to thank our sponsors for supporting us so well all of these days. We want to thank Nunbelievable, Divinely Delicious Cookies on a Mission, 20% off with the code SREE, nunbelievable.com. We want to thank The Inventor in You, a step-by-step guide to your first invention by Charles Cunnincarroll, developer of more than 80 patents, at Inventor Charles, guide-to-invention.com. And we also want to tell you about episodes coming up, including tomorrow morning, the Spin It Social Hour. Let's talk photography and social media. It's the 25th show by our friend Stephen Kaplan, social media and visual strategist, former photo editor of the New York Times. His guest, Thomas Werner, co-founder of Ascended Creative, and on Instagram is Thomas Werner Projects. You will learn a lot every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. after our 9 a.m. show. And then we have a special episode of the New York Times read-along. Suzanne McCormick, U.S. President of United Way Worldwide, is our guest. And she is the former CEO of American Red Cross of Southern Maine and United Way of Greater Portland, and a Peace Corps alum in Thailand. Our executive producer, Neil Parekh, will be our guest host. He is the VP of Events and Communications at Digimentors, the company I co-founded, and former director of Network Communications, United Way Worldwide. This will take place at 8:30 a.m. Sunday. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you for your support. If you have any comments or questions, please email me, Sree@sree.net. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye.